For the latest in strategic affairs, subscribe to our YouTube channel. Click the bell icon for updates.
Hello and welcome to StratNews Global. Earlier this week, all our three digital portals organized what we call an annual marquee event, the India Defence Conclave, as well as Catalyst, which brings together different stakeholders from the technology space to defense and decision makers in the Ministry of Defense, all the three armed forces, and has an audience of international dimensions, including several defense attaches posted in India, the defense industry stalwarts, industry analysts, and some of the think tank participants. That event was something which we had different sessions about and where we spoke to top-notch defense professionals. One of that interactions, or the highlight of one of those interactions, was my chat or a fireside chat with Chief of Defense Staff, General Anil Chauhan. And that is what I'm going to put on this week's Simply Nitin. Watch that, it has many takeaways. I'm Nitin Gokhale.
Anil Chauhan, thank you very much for your time. This is the first, in fact, I remember last year when we held this conference in September, you were still not named the CDS. I think you were named after 4 days. So a lot of people asked me that, did you know that he was going to become CDS? I said, I didn't know. Perhaps you yourself didn't know. So I don't know what it was.
No, I didn't know.
You didn't know.
In fact, I was supposed to go to Netherlands to visit my daughter.
Yeah.
And book my tickets. I got my visas done. And when it was announced, I think the only person who was slightly disappointed was my daughter. She said, Papa, aap nahi aaoge? I said, better this time I can't come.
I remember you. Yeah, I remember you telling me that you, in fact, incurred some financial loss also because of the ticket getting cancelled at the last moment. But nevertheless, you completed 1 year as CDS now, and a lot of expectations from the people. You are the second CDS. General Rawat, unfortunately, left us in unfortunate circumstances. He had started something which was supposed to be transformative or innovative. But you have had to take on that mantle after a gap. So when you look back on this year, 1 year, what do you see? What are your milestones that you may have had in your mind that you achieved? Or what do you think has been the main outcome of your 1 year journey?
Nitin, I think in this 1 year, if I look back, the most important thing what I've been able to achieve is, I think, to forge a kind of consensus on macro issues between all the three services chiefs and myself as to what kind of roadmap for transformation we want to lay down for the armed forces. So that's, I think, kind of an achievement, I would say. And along with that, as a fallout of that, we've been able to build some kind of spirit of bond-forming and camaraderie between the three services and remove whatever little mistrust existed between them. So there's good synergy right now amongst the three services to work together.
That consensus building is what I think you said to yourself. Now I can see back, when I look back, I think consensus building was your main objective.
Yeah, I always thought so, because there's no point actually creating joint structures where people are not ready to fight together. So consensus was important for me. And obviously, consensus is not the best solution.
That's true.
So somewhere you have to compromise to take everyone along. But I think we'll be able to get to a good solution also, as well as consensus among the three services. It's a journey actually. We just commenced and hopefully we'll complete it in a good manner.
That's right. In fact, one of the main objectives of this national security reforms, and you were, before this appointment, you were in the National Security Council Secretariat, which was also part of the national security transformation, was about the end result, or at least one significant milestone was supposed to be theaterization. Where are we on that plan or that objective?
Let me begin by saying that theaterization is one of the most ambitious reforms actually, which is being attempted post-independence. So it's a kind of a transformative kind of a change which will bring about. In this, if you look at theaterization, I would try to break it down into three small processes: jointness, integration, and which will lead to theaterization. So it's a step-by-step process. A jointness, when I say, it would mean that creating that bonhomie and the spirit between the three services to work together, remove any mistrust which exists between them. So this is one which really can't be measured actually. So there's nothing which can be definitive about it, so only you can feel about it. So I can say that if there is nothing adversely commented upon by anything on this particular process, then that's one of a milestone for success. When we're looking at integration, it is trying to look at the unique capabilities of each service, which is good, and then combining it together, forging it together. It's a physical process. There can be an end state to it. We've been able to identify almost about 9 verticals where we need to integrate together, whether it is operations, operation logistic, intelligence, information flow, training, HR, administration, supply chain management, logistics, maintenance. So these are some issues in which we are working together, and this lays the foundation for creation of theatre commands. So theatre command by itself otherwise would be meaningless if this is not done. So it's a process actually. We could have taken it up sequentially, but I think we are a late starter, so we're doing it all simultaneously together. All three: jointness, integration, and theaterization.
Right. So in the integration process, you mentioned those 8 or 9 objectives or verticals that you spoke about. Give us 1 or 2 examples of that. When you say, is it about cross postings of officers? Is it about joint training? Or is it about just joint procurement? How are you sort of measuring? This can be at least measured, if not other things.
So, okay, let's talk about, I'll just talk about logistics supply chain. So all three services are, say, like the armed forces. So they have got their own logistic management inventory, known as CICD. The Air Force has got EMOLs, and the Navy works on a different system. All these 3 systems are disparate. They don't talk to each other. So finally, so it's a huge inventory which all 3 services are holding, and there would be a large common inventory between the 3 services, and it's known differently. So at one point of time, we want to, we can't integrate it, but this all 3 applications should be able to talk to each other, so we understand where the inventory is and what inventory is. This is fine, but that can only happen once we codify and standardize the inventory and name that inventory as one. So that's a second process we are undertaking. The first process is this. Second would be codification of inventory. Third process is, once this physical integration takes place, we'll look at maintenance and combine this with the inventory management. So it's a process actually which has to be carried forward. I've given you just one example of integration. So in each vertical which I spoke about, there will be large number of processes that will be involved. And that is all important before we put the theatre commands in place.
So logistics nodes are one start point, which common logistic nodes that have come in.
Logistic nodes which had come up, we're looking at, not looking at this, what I told you about,
not
this supply chain management. Logistic nodes, we're looking at some kind of logistic issues which could be done together. So it's something like, if we do a contract for hiring of CST, rather than all 3 services doing a contract separately, is one contract which is operated by all 3 services. When you're looking at supplies in a common station, then there could be one supply contract, which pushes for everyone rather than 3 supply contracts. So joint logistic nodes, we're looking at this. We're looking at some kind of stocking in depots for other services. But the inventories will still
will have to be defined as you go forward, yeah. But one of the important steps that I think you managed to get through in Parliament was the Inter-Services Organisation Bill. How will that help in the integration of services?
So we had a number of inter-service organizations raised, so Andaman Nicobar Command, SFC. They were joint training institutions. And but we were finding that all the officers or men were governed by their respective service acts actually. So this particular bill, Inter-Services Command, Control and Organization Bill, empowers the commander or CO of a joint service institution to try an officer or other rank from the other service through his own act. So it's a kind of an empowering kind of an act which helps him. But that's only a start point, actually, I would say. In the sense, we still have a lot of ground to cover to operationalize this particular aspect of inter-services organization bill itself. Say, for example, today every service has got a different censor policy. For the same offence, if there are 3 officers, Army, Navy, Air Force, and they were to be charge sheeted and for the same offence given the same punishment of a censor, a severe displeasure, it would be different for an Army officer. That same severe displeasure would be different for a naval officer, and for an Air Force officer it would be differently. For Army officer it is lifelong, he won't be promoted. For a naval officer it will be operative for about 3 years, for an Air Force officer till his first promotion board. So to get everyone online, we have to have a common censor policy. So that would be, say, one. As a long term, of course, we'll have to get one act. So the Armed Forces Act would be the answer probably, rather than having Army Act, Navy Act and the Air Force Act in the long run.
Right.
But that's still a distance away.
Yeah.
So in the meantime, ISO bill is a kind of enabling act which empowers people to take this.
Right. So that is, of course, on the human resource part, like you spoke about. But there is also, when DMA was also parallelly created with the post of the Chief of Defence Staff, there was also Department of Military Affairs. And some parts of it, some parts of procurement process from the Department of Defence was given away to DMA. Has the process been stabilized, or there are still some areas of overlap, or I would say differences of opinion, conflict? How do you see that playing out?
So Department of Military Affairs is a separate department that was created. And apart from CDS, another hat I wear is Secretary DMA actually. So that is like a Secretary to Government of India. That's something new for the armed forces. And it's not only me. With me, I also have additional secretary and 5 odd joint secretaries. 3 of them are from the services and 2 of them are from the civil services. So that is one. When the DoD had responsibilities were hived off into 2. If I was to say broadly, the responsibilities were for DoD, Department of Defense, was capability building. And for DMA, it would be operational preparedness. When I say operational preparedness, that would mean that it is related to revenue procurements, day-to-day running of the armed forces, anything to do with the officers, posting, appointments, promotions, complaints. So day-to-day running of the armed forces, also changes in their organization, WEPs, war establishments, authorization of people, etc. All this comes under the purview of DMA. So operational preparedness is my job, and broadly the DefSec is responsible for capability building. So that's the 2 you can say.
I think so. The clear distinction has been established, and it's working as far as I can see.
It's working well. We can't say that there's a clear distinction in 100% of the things.
Right.
There'll be some overlaps, but I think there's enough maturity to resolve any kind of differences which exist.
True. This year, earlier this year, when you had the Combined Commanders Conference, I think the theme was, if I remember correctly, was ready, resurgent and relevant. So under this rubric, what was the KRAs that you wanted to achieve?
So we named it as RRR before RRR actually became famous. And that was in April last year. And ready was very simple, because with armed forces, the basic job is to be operationally prepared. So being operationally ready was important. And being relevant was, we're part of this nation actually. Yeah. So how can we help in the development of the nation? That was the second thing. And the resurgent was a reformed armed forces, which we spoke about, say integration, jointness, and this kind of reforms, when we are talking, it's not restricted to being only creation of these operational issues or organizational restructuring. It's HR, your Agnipath scheme, so that it's successfully rolled out. And similarly, any other reforms which the armed forces need to take. So that was what research.
Yes, exactly. We're talking about reforms, or the way you want to be ready for the future challenges. Now, future challenges are changing at such rapid pace. We first 2 years or 3 years ago, we talked about Azerbaijan-Armenia conflict. Use of drones is now going to be the way forward. Then came the Ukraine-Russia conflict, where we said prolonged wars are back in fashion or back in vogue. And now we suddenly see over the weekend what the Hamas has managed to do. And I think today, this afternoon, General Shekhar was pointing out, in the last 50 years after Second World War, no big nation has ever won a war against a small nation. It's a thought process that he was trying to sort of tell us here. In that context, how is technology going to help Indian armed forces to be future ready and relevant?
Let me say that, we are all in midst, the whole world actually, and the third generation of revolution in military affairs. When we talking about modernization or this revolution in military affairs, certainly it's influenced by technology. But it's not technology alone which is going to influence modernization. I think a little bit of a chat on this took place in the session before me, and I've heard Ashish and Dr. Reddy talking about it. Technology, along with that, is how are you using that technology. That means your tactics associated with your battle procedures or battle drills, or what the Americans call as TTP, tactics, techniques and procedures. They have to be evolved so that this technology is assimilated in the way you fight battles. Third thing, along with this, organizational changes to adopt that. So these three things will have to go together for any kind of a modernization initiative which any armed forces will have to undertake. So this is on. Over here again, there could be two steps actually. Or if I have to make some kind of a distinction, technology may lead to, tactics being changing. That is one. And that's the role actually we are following now. We are chasing technology which already exists and then adopting TTPs accordingly to the technologies. The second model could be that we develop tactics as to how we want to fight actually. And they develop technology for that. We are still a distance away for the second part. All this IDEX challenges, what we're doing, kind of problem statements. We are looking at new technologies. And tactics and then is technology. Whereas till now, we are following the earlier model. So we are at different stage of this change as far as modernization is concerned.
In fact, through the day, when we started our morning session pre-lunch, was all about technology. We had the who's who of the scientific and technology community here, from the principal scientific advisor right down to ISRO chairman and the DG DRDO. And the theme that was a common thread in these discussions was about how can you adopt future or emerging and critical technologies for use of the armed forces. So the all-of-nation approach, where you also coordinate with other arms of the government which are looking at technology, space, AI, quantum, all that. Are the armed forces looking at that much more seriously? Today the Air Chief also spoke about what they are doing. But as a tri-service, head of tri-services organizations, what are your thoughts on that?
So apart from that reforms which I spoke about, another important aspect of my job is Indianization and this modernization part of the armed forces. So we are developing an integrated capability development program, which is slightly different from how we used to induct equipment earlier. LTIPP. So that's a little bit of a change. We are looking at that. So we already have a model in which there is a tri-service synergy before we induct technologies. I must also tell you that it's not only the tri-services, when it is concerning very critical technologies, the government has structures in which other agencies also get involved. So if you're looking at very high-end technology related to space or cyber, or underwater domain awareness, etc., then these little bit of a coordination is done. So we already have structures.
So those structures are there. One final question. There was a question from the audience in the afternoon about Agniveers. You spoke about that one of the steps of the reforms was the the Agnipath scheme and Agniveers being inducted. And what he asked was about the training. How are you adapting or adopting new training techniques for them to make them equally effective, but have it in a short period of time? What is the mix of thing? In fact, the question was about simulators and how simulation can help. So is there a way forward where you don't compromise on quality or effectiveness, but yet adopt new technologies for the training systems?
Let me begin by saying that again, this is another transformative kind of a reform which we have undertaken, and it's a major change that will bring out. And the major advantages of this particular scheme means I was a commanding officer, say 20 years back, and I had a bunch of soldiers, and I was just given those, and I had to work with those. I never had an option to actually select people. So the whole system was that someone else will calculate the vacancies, someone is going to give those vacancies, someone will recruit people, someone will train people, and then they'll come to operational unit in which a commanding officer is expected to perform an operational task. I had no choice in that selection. But today a commanding officer has a choice. So he has a choice, and he says, okay, I want these 25% people who will be retained who are the best. So it's a transformative change. It's also a change because for any kind of a contingency or like we are seeing, in case Israel was able to mobilize 3 lakh reservists on a short period, we also have this kind of a system. But it has never been practiced ever since 71 war. So when you have a scheme like this, you just have to extend probably in case of a national emergency, the terms of engagement by 1 more year, you have 50,000 people extra. So these are the major advantages of this particular scheme at the national level also, and as a cutting edge for a commanding officer. Now your basic question is that, earlier we had soldiers getting trained out in say 9 months. Your basic military training and advanced military training. Can we cut down that training period because, the soldier is serving for a lesser amount of time? Yes, we can cut down, provided the intake is good. So I think that's good intake. We can draw people from people, then we can do that. And simulators is one thing, which is rightly identified. We can do that. And basically, because of the enhanced education standards which are now there, we haven't changed. So right from 47, the Britishers also used to take same soldierly material, who were probably not even, they were illiterate, some of them. And they used to take 9 months to train them actually. But I don't think that system will work now. You can train them faster because the uptake level is fast. You don't have to teach people the language. I remember when our soldiers would come from Nepal, we would teach them, a lot of times would spend in teaching them Hindi. Sometimes were allotted for them to ride bicycles. So because in mountains there were no bicycles. So, and they would be learning Hindi actually because they'd never been exposed to Hindi. So 2 months used to pass by in this. So this is no longer relevant.
We're not relevant at all, yeah. Thank you. One final question and I'll end this evening because at least the formal part of it before we get into our dinner and drinks here. Indo-Pacific was seen to be the new theatre of conflict, or at least theatre of interest across the world. Then it became a European war with Asian consequences as far as Russia and Ukraine is concerned. Now with what happened on the weekend between Israel and what Hamas did, the kind of attack that you did, do you see as a military leader that no conflict can really be predicted or theatre of conflict can never be predicted and we have to be prepared for all contingencies? Is that something still relevant or you can still predict some of those geopolitical churn that can happen?
There are some fundamentals actually. They can't change. And so Indo-Pacific or that area will remain an area of future contestation, that's for sure. Every crisis doesn't lead to war or conflict. And in today's world, a crisis, confrontation, conflict and combat means war, they follow the same continuum. So we may be seeing crisis right now that can become a confrontation, which you are also seeing, and we experienced it also. So it's the same continuum which flows. And in the long run, because of compulsions of geography as far as another neighbor is concerned, he'll have to run his writ on two oceans at least if he wants to become a superpower. And Indian Ocean is one and the Pacific is the other. So that would be an area of future contestation in my belief.
Thank you very much for such, beautifully elaborated thoughts and insights into how the road to theaterization is, where is it leading to, and what are the milestones that we are looking at, and also, of course, your last remark on contestation.